Good morning. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. Today, we're going to get a different perspective. You know, we spent so much time interviewing candidates, but I think it's also important to get a perspective of just real people. And we have somebody that is joining us today that has a different perspective. It's going through, we have all these complaints about what's going on in college, and she's living it. Now, she's also an activist, which I appreciate. So my guest, Addison Werth. Addison, why are you involved in all the things you're involved in?
Because I believe that our generation, Generation Z, is the future. We have the opportunity to wield a lot of power. That was evidenced in our most recent midterm elections, with Generation Z voting almost 38% Democrat above Republicans. And I think it's time for a change, especially in this state with the garbage that has gone on the last umpteen years. And I think it's time for Generation Z to stand up. And you can't do that by sitting on the couch, scrolling through TikTok or scrolling through Instagram all day, reposting stuff. You have to actually go out there and get stuff done. And that's what I'm doing. And I'm really happy to be doing it.
So wait a minute. TikTok and Facebook, they're not the real world?
Not even close.
Because Gen Z has a bad reputation.
Very true.
So you're right at the forefront of the culture war. Mm-hmm. What do you encounter day to day when you go to school?
A lot of hate. A lot of harassment, especially I'm involved now with Students for Life at Fresno State. I'm currently the vice president, and we just did a tabling about a couple weeks ago, and one of the girls that we had come up to our table started screaming and yelling at us and screaming profanities, saying that we're a menace to society, that we all should have died and been aborted ourselves. And that's just kind of the normal, to be honest, which it shouldn't be. I mean, I'm only 19, and most 19-year-olds don't face hate and harassment like that, especially on that level, on a college campus where you're supposed to feel safe and welcome and in a safe space, according to all of these professors and administrators, especially at Fresno State in particular.
You should have given her a timeout.
Honestly, yeah, it's just really frustrating. But you know what? We keep fighting and we keep chugging along anyway, because we know at the end of the day that at least we're doing the right thing and standing up for the unborn. So,
how many people are in your group?
Oh wow, that come to like normal meetings, I would probably say about 25. Currently signed up on our list, probably about over 150. But we currently have almost 1,000 followers on Instagram, so that's pretty cool.
So it's easier to actually sign up than to actually make the meetings, because then they can be almost closet conservatives as opposed to being on the front lines.
Yeah, which is really sad, because Students for Life is a nonpartisan organization. We don't endorse any political candidates. We don't talk about political issues. We only talk about the sanctity of life. And we actually have quite a few liberals in our group as well. So it's not even just conservatives that are, pro-life. We even have an atheist in our group. So it doesn't even have to be like religious, to join us, but a lot of people just won't come because they're scared of the backlash or the pressure, and we're really trying to open up by doing more tablings and more events to get more people involved, to show that it is okay to be pro-life. You don't have to be a closeted pro-lifer. You can say that life is important, all life is valuable, and anytime, any place on campus.
How did Prop 1 affect what you guys are doing?
Well, for a little context on Prop 1, if you don't know what Prop 1 is a constitutional amendment that just passed the ballot through the midterms last week, but it was like 75% passing.
No, it's a little, I looked today, It's a little better. It's more like 65.
Oh, wow, that has improved.
That's still not good.
No, of course not, but what it was like a couple days ago obviously wasn't great, because we're still counting ballots.
That's a whole other issue.
A week and a half later, but Prop 1 basically allows for abortion to be written into the California Constitution up until the moment of birth. So a mom could be sitting in the delivery room about to have her child. She could be perfectly healthy. The baby could be perfectly healthy. No outside circumstances going on. and then want to have an abortion, just say, hey, doctor, I don't want this baby anymore, literally on the delivery room table. And he could say, okay, no questions asked. And you perform an abortion right there.
Well, I don't know that I would use the word abortion. I would use the word murder.
Murder, yeah.
It's truly a sad thing.
It's disgusting. And that's honestly why we had a whole campaign going into Prop 1. I spoke at a press conference with Fresno City Councilman Gary Bredefeld and Right to Life Chairman John Girardi and Bishop Joseph Brennan of the Catholic Church here in town, basically talking about the Fresno State Students for Life perspective on Prop 1, that it's disgusting, it's inhumane, it is murder, and how even most pro-choicers in the state of California, there's been multiple studies going out that even like pro-choicers in the state of California are anti-killing babies up until the moment they're born. However, the way that Prop 1 was written, if you actually read your ballot, it talks about how this is just preserving women's reproductive rights. It doesn't talk about up until the moment of birth, and I feel like people's opinions would have changed had the wording been like that, but of course, it's a very misleading wording in order for this proposition to get passed.
Not just misleading, but there's a difference between reading the little synopsis of the law and actually reading the text of the law.
Correct.
And most people, you're lucky if you get to the synopsis.
Yes.
If you read the actual text, it is a much more horrible, extreme position, and I don't believe that most of the country is in that extreme position.
No.
Even if you're I hate to even use the word pro-choice, pro-killing babies, but even if you're in that position, most of the people are somewhat reasonable and begin to realize, well, wait a minute, that is a baby, but they just don't acknowledge it until later.
We call it other things. We call it an embryo. We call it a fetus. We try to basically counteract every word except for the word baby.
Well, if we found bacteria on Mars, that'd be life on Mars.
Oh, of course. We'd pass a congressional bill in about 5 seconds. It'd get through the House, the Senate, and then signed up from the president in probably about a week or so because, oh my gosh, it's some life form on another planet. But when we have a baby in the mother's womb on this planet, in this country, it's apparently not important, which is disgusting. And it is murder, so.
Yeah, it is truly sad, but that is not the law of the land.
No.
I was pleased to see that it has gotten better as they counted more ballots. California is kind of interesting in that we're so liberal in some ways. But in others, if you look at anything outside of the big cities, we're not so liberal.
No.
One of the moments of hope for me was when I looked at returns from Kings County, Madera County, Fresno County, and Tulare County. We essentially voted the opposite way as the of the big populations. So if you were to look at, for instance, how Newsom did, he won roughly 60-40. He lost in those 4 counties I mentioned roughly 55-45. If California's going to change, we're sitting in ground zero.
Correct.
So the fact that you're out there fighting, frankly, part of the culture war.
No, it is.
Matters.
It's, I think as far as that goes, I think it's only gotten worse as we have more interaction with social media, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, all that stuff. Only because on TikTok in particular, they promote very much a culture of death, as we like to call it. A culture that it is okay to kill your child as a form of birth control, not as a form of like rape or incest fixing, basically, which I personally don't even believe in, but that it's a fix for rape or incest, but because every child's life matters. But in particular, on social media, you have these influencers that are paid from organizations like Planned Parenthood to put out these informational TikToks, which basically talk about how, look at all these resources Planned Parenthood has for you. You know, we can help you, but they don't talk about that they're helping you kill a child. It's just to fix the problem, which is a huge now part of our culture. And you have a lot of people that I'm friends with, in fact, that don't know the facts on abortion and don't know that Planned Parenthood isn't out there to help you. It's not out there to provide services for you. It's only out there to benefit themselves, increase their profit in order to kill your baby, which is...
Wait, they're not a nonprofit? They make money?
Oh, they make...
I know.
So much money. It's honestly disgusting. they can call themselves whatever they want. They can say they do mammograms for women. They can say that they give women healthcare services,
But
dental, whatever. But
then why don't
do
they
it at
do
all.
ultrasounds?
Because then that would mean that they would lose money. In order for them to provide prenatal care, they are losing money. They make money when they perform abortions and then sell those fetal body parts off to organizations for them to use in medical testing, which is actually used in a lot of our medicines nowadays. There's currently a Tylenol lawsuit in the same realm of them using aborted fetal body parts to create Tylenol, basically, which is disgusting. And like among other things, but no, they make money from abortions and they lose money from providing prenatal care such as ultrasounds.
So TikTok influences people, but I think nothing is more effective than actually having a conversation and looking somebody in the eye. So the fact that you're willing to sit there at a table and take the abuse at, it's Fresno State?
Yes.
At Fresno State is really important. We need more people to step up, to find their strength. And the fact that you found your strength at this young age, I'm impressed.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
On a more positive note, you did some fun things with Turning Point. You had an opportunity to go to Florida. Talk about that.
Okay, so I went to SAS, or Student Action Summit as it's called, back at the end of July, and it was really cool. I've been to some other Turning Point conferences, but I liked SAS a little more particular. I got to hear the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. I never heard him before in person, so that was a really cool experience for me. His speech was amazing, and just the room was electric. I mean, you had Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Kimberly Guilfoyle, Don Jr., all sitting in the same room together, along with, thousands of other students hearing him. And it was really invigorating. It was a really positive speech about what he did as president. And then it goes into he went more darker parts, of how kind of garbage our country, unfortunately, has gotten under the Biden administration. But that there is hope at the end of the day, and I really enjoyed it, and I think all the other students did there too. So,
how many students?
I believe there's a little under 3,000 students there.
Okay. Now, my experience, because when I started being a political activist, now about 2.5, almost 3 years ago, as soon as I found my group, I was stronger. Did you find that?
I definitely think so. Some of my closest friends have come out of this movement, specifically Turning Point, and now Students for Life. So I think it's really cool to make those connections, because when you have people around you that support you and that support what you're doing, you feel more confident and a stronger person for sure.
No, I think that sense of community, it means you're not standing alone.
Exactly.
It's hard to stand alone.
Yeah.
So I think if we're going to win this culture war, first you change yourself. If you can be bold enough to take some small steps, like talk to your family. Shouldn't be a big step, but in a lot of people's worlds, it is. And you can start the conversation like, what do you think of gas prices?
Exactly.
They can be a total liberal, and they're not going to be happy that gas has gone insane.
Well, of course not. Who is? I mean, I think especially with Thanksgiving coming up, you have a big gathering with all your family. Extended family may not even see the entire year, but you get to sit down together at the table one time and just having the little conversations. What do you think of the gas prices? What do you think of all the crime that's gone on? What do you think of the homelessness crisis? You just start with little things like that that are universal topics that probably most people don't really appreciate, especially now going on.
But it builds a bridge.
Absolutely. And I think it builds a good conversation, and you just slowly plant seeds, and hopefully those seeds sprout over time.
Yeah. Well, you're not going to, especially in an event like that, you're not going to change their mind outright. But if you all of a sudden got them to consider another possibility.
Absolutely.
And I always like to point out that California is a one-party state. And I think there's a lot of evidence that if there isn't an opposition, and I'm absolutely a conservative, but if there isn't an opposition, that at least over time, it might be okay for a little while, but one-party rule corrupts.
Absolutely.
And when we have a supermajority, I believe that we have an extremely corrupt group of people up in Sacramento that don't listen to the people whatsoever.
I think that's very evidenced by some of the more recent, in my opinion, family infringement bills that have gone on in the state capitol. The vaccine mandate bill for students for elementary school students. In order to go to school, you'd have to have the COVID vaccine. It hasn't passed yet, but when legislative session comes back on January 3rd, it is going to be brought up again. The minor consent bill that allows a child to go to a medical provider at age 12, which, for context, my brother's 11. I don't believe he could ever go to a medical provider and say, hey, I don't really want to be a boy anymore. I want to be a girl. And that's legal now in the state of California.
Mhm.
Children aren't developmentally ready for that. And the fact that Sacramento politicians think that it's okay not only to pass it or even to bring it up, but just to completely go around parents in that matter is absolutely disgusting and shows that they have no wherewithal for the people of our state, our children, and our parents.
Well, their perspective is they're not your kids.
Exactly.
They're the state's kids, and if that's the type of state we have, we no longer have any freedom.
Correct, because they're in state schools, they're going to be in state-funded programs, and now they're going to be controlled, or in this case, mutilated by the state. So,
And it's a big difference when somebody is of age of consent to decide to do that, as opposed to we don't entrust minors to do a whole lot of things for good reason.
For good reason.
They're not allowed to drink. They're not allowed to drive.
Yeah.
They should not be making choices about things that will affect the rest of their life.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at it. I believe there's a documentary out on the Daily Wire, I want to say, and I think it's the What is a Woman documentary from Matt Walsh.
Matt Walsh.
Yeah, and so it talks about basically these trans people who transitioned when they were underage, when they were minors, and had their parents at the time consented to it, and how they regret their decision now because they were immature. They didn't realize that was just growing pains. They didn't understand, and now they have to live with this choice.
Now they can never have kids.
Exactly. And I feel like that goes to a broader conversation of the government not wanting us to have children. I think that's a completely different discussion, but I think it definitely contributes to it. Unfortunately, and yeah, it's just so sad that you can have children, and in some cases, the parents consenting to this, which I believe is child abuse, basically ruin their kids' future before it's even started, and their kids' future before it's even have an opportunity to start. So,
well, they're not going to have any grandkids.
Exactly.
If you take hormone therapy as a minor, whichever direction you transition, even before the surgery, odds are you're not going to be able to have kids.
Yeah.
And so that means that all those parents that are okay with that means they're not going to have grandkids. That's a scary thought.
It's disgusting. I think there's no other word you can really put to describe that other than it's disgusting and yeah, it's immoral. So
yes, but there almost seems to be a new morality.
I would have to agree with that.
And I jokingly say that because I don't believe there is a new morality. It's just that they've chosen to couch it that way so that it sounds like they're not doing anything wrong. They're still moral, good people. I'm not so sure they are.
I don't really want to say that. I think it's very telling of the people who control these narratives that they want to push this on to not just adults, not people who are over 21 or in this case 25, which is when your brain is fully developed. They are able to make fully, comprehensible decisions. But they're pushing it on our kids. And my mom has a saying, and has through the last 2 years that I'm going to use right now, that when you come for parents, it's one thing. If you came for the vaccines, that was one thing. Millions and millions of adults got the vaccine. That's fine. But when you come for our children, when you force them to get a vaccine, force them to wear a mask, they can't go to school, saying, oh no, it's okay for your child, to have their genitals mutilated at such a young age, and it's no problem at all. I think you have a massive problem, and I don't really think so much it speaks to the individual. I think it does to an extent, but I think it speaks more to the people in charge and the people in power who are pushing these disgusting narratives. So
it's almost like they consider power to be the most important thing, and that they don't really have. I don't know that they've thought it through. It's just, can we make the sheep dance in this way?
Correct. Yeah, because if they don't get what they want at the end of the day, which is money and power, then in their eyes, there's a problem. So
I think this applies somewhat to the Republicans, but I believe more to the Democrats, that instead of standing on principles, they are so frequently standing on power. We're going to go ahead and take a break on that thought. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. When we come back, I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about your thoughts on what happened with the November election. No particular place. Where do you want to go? I have some thoughts, but we're going to go ahead and come back. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. Today I am joined by student Right to Life Vice President at Fresno State. Boy, I'm blanking. At Fresno State, Addison Werth. Welcome, Addison.
Hi, nice to be here.
So, what do you think of the results from the November election?
Well, I think a good place to start is the lack of results from the November election. So
you mean California?
Yes.
Anybody that has a vote by mail system?
Basically. I think another good example is Arizona currently. We're a week and 2 days past the election, 3 days past the election. And you still haven't even gotten to 80% of the California votes counted yet. That's, first of all, unheard of. We used to have elections I'm only 19, but I still remember elections being counted day of. Finished 100% reporting, all done. You know the results by like 10 p.m. Done.
France still does that.
France still does that, yeah.
Well, and the reason I picked France is because they're a pretty leftist nation. Now, Florida's conservative, so I expect that they will be organized and actually take care of it. But a leftist nation of significant population, if they have major problems, it takes them 2 days to know the results of elections with major problems.
And we're a week and 2-3 days out, and we still don't know the full results. They're still counting votes in the Valadeo-Salas race.
30 days to count. 30 days to vote.
Disgusting.
And if something is postmarked, so if you can find a way to put a postmark on, you could add additional ballots. I think there's just vulnerabilities. I'm not saying somebody's doing that.
No.
I would be shocked if somebody isn't.
Exactly.
But we've set up a system that makes it easy to play all kinds of games.
Correct. You've made it now, instead of election day, election month, election season, as they now like to call it. They like to throw in these little terms to change vocabulary so that it's normal. It's totally normal. It's always been like this. But I'm old enough to remember, and I mean, I'm not super old. I'm only 19, but I'm old enough to remember day of elections. You would know the results by the end of the day. Or
back in the good old days?
Exactly. Literally just 8 years ago. It's disgusting. And I think it's because when COVID happened and you said, oh, mail-in ballots, no problem. It's fine. It's just absentee ballots on steroids. It's all good, right? Absentee ballots have worked before, so now we're just going to make this program mass. And I guess I can talk about it a little bit from my perspective, but so I received a mail-in ballot. I did, I have for the last 2 elections that I've been able to vote in. But the last election, which was the primaries, I went in to vote, and I took my mail-in ballot for them to shred, right? Because that's technically what you're supposed to do. And I go to the lady, and she's like, okay, what's your address? So I first gave her my ID. She says, no, you don't need that, which is a whole other conversation. But I give her my ID. She says, no, you don't need that. And I give her my ballot to shred, and she's like, okay, what's your address? I gave her my address. She says, that's weird. And I said, what's wrong? And she brings over another lady. She's like, look at this, and looks at her computer screen. And I'm like, what's wrong? She's like, you're in the system 3 times. What? How is that possible? I've only registered once, and that was through the DMV right after I got my permit for the first time. And that was a pre-registration. That wasn't registering when I turned 18. I pre-registered when I turned 16. And I was like, why am I in the system 3 times? And they could not give me an explanation. I said, well, then can you take it out? Sorry, that's not our prerogative. We can't do that. So I'm currently registered as a voter in California 3 times, under the same name, the same address, and I could technically vote all 3 times. And they would have no idea because they don't need to see my ID to vote.
Okay, so here's what you should have done. You should have called the sheriff and reported ID theft.
Kind of, sort of.
The Register of Voters office in Fresno, I have on fairly good authority, has been working to purge names that are not eligible. So I assume that they took care of yours, though. Did that same problem happen in November?
I was not told. I was stood there at the table for a little bit, and she was like pointing at her computer, but she never said anything. So I'm not entirely sure if it was still a problem, or she just like let it pass and just didn't say anything, or like it wasn't in the system anymore. But when I was there in the primaries, my name was never taken out of the registry. It was still in there 3 times. So I don't know if they like took care of the problem afterwards. I doubt it. But yeah, I wasn't told anything going into the midterm elections to vote that that there was a problem. So
Ballot harvesting is legal.
yes,
I think which I have huge problems
of
with.
course.
But if that's how we're going to play the game, Southern California, with some of their mega churches, responded to that.
Mhm.
And I think, like Michelle Steele, largely was elected because those mega churches put in drop boxes and expected all of their parishioners to vote.
Mhm.
I don't want people to be forced to go vote.
No, of course not.
I want people to become informed, get involved, vote a day of. And, for instance, I pulled out my ID, and they told me exactly the same thing they do with you, but I was making a point. Oh no, I want to prove who I am so that you
Exactly.
don't know that I'm lying. And I said it loud enough that everybody in the
heard.
room could hear.
Exactly. Yeah, we were standing. I voted with my parents, and I will say something good about Fresno County in particular, at least to the voting center that I went. I went to the Woodward Park location, the Woodward Park Library, and my parents have been voting for however long, decades. And they said that this was the first time they'd ever seen a line to vote. And this line was not even just wrapped around like the little inside part of the building. It went through the library all the way to the backside. And we probably stood in line for about like 25 minutes, but the line, once you like got in, it looked a lot longer than that. So they said like the turnout was a lot better, but we were almost towards the front, and this like nice little older couple is standing behind us, and she has like her ballot like to drop off. But she was like, I don't know, like, should I vote in person? I've stood in line long enough. And so my mom like had a conversation with her saying how your vote is more likely to be counted if you vote day of and you vote in person, not using a computer machine, but using a paper ballot with a pen.
And then feeding it into the machine.
Exactly. That it's more likely to be counted then than if it is the mail-in ballot and you just drop it off. And she was like, oh my gosh, really? I had no idea. And so like my mom and my dad were starting to have a conversation with her about how important it is to day of vote, that your vote's probably not going to get counted on time, or maybe it might be misplaced or something might happen to it if it's a mail-in ballot. And so she was like, okay, I'll vote in person. So she stood in line, and instead of just dropping off her ballot, she ended up voting in person with a paper ballot instead of a computer ballot. And I say this only because you can just see by one little interaction with somebody that if we're able on a grassroots level to tell people, hey, you know what? Yeah, I know it's more convenient for you to sit at your kitchen table and to vote at home. Totally understand, totally got it, can relate to you. But if you want your voice heard, you want your vote counted, then you need to get out there on election day, whether it be at 7 a.m. or right before the polls close at 8 p.m., that you need to get out there and you need to vote in person. If there's a line, fine, stand in it. Your vote's going to get counted, so just vote in person. And so I think it's important at a grassroots level.
So there's a couple of reasons for that. But first, I want everybody to know that in this county, you can vote at any polling place at any time.
Yes.
As long as you can come up with your address.
It doesn't have to
Or
be
frankly,
like your zip
somebody
code.
else's address and are willing to lie.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, you can vote at any place. Number 2, if you vote, and I actually broke the rule. I voted in person, but I voted just before my poll closed Monday night because I knew I had a crazy Tuesday. I spent 3 hours on the radio.
Of course.
And I had a bunch of family stuff going, so I'm like, okay, how can I get as close as possible? Well, I was basically kicked out of that polling place because they were closing. I got it as late as I could Monday, as close to Tuesday as I could. Number 2, if you vote in person, you go through the process you talked about. Less hands actually touch your ballot.
Exactly.
If you drop off your ballot, whether it's through the mail, more hands touch it because every mailman touches it, or mailwoman. That's weird to say that, isn't
It's
it?
a little bit. have to be, of course, politically correct. So
whoever delivers the mail. So those people touch it. It goes through their processing center. It then goes to the counting center. And then you've got somebody that's got to unload it, put it in the right place. That person, another person has to open it, look at it. They try to feed it through. If there's any problems, and you won't know, say coffee got spilled on it.
You wouldn't know
during
that.
the mail. You wouldn't know.
Of course not.
It would have to be what they call adjudicated. So more hands would have to touch it. Every time a different pair of hands touch it, there's a greater risk. So you limit your risk by doing the paper ballot. You feed it into the machine. If you made a mistake, let's say you colored outside the bubble, you used the felt tip pen so deeply that it bled through to the... At that moment, when it feeds through, it will not read it.
Yep.
It'll say there's a problem. You request another ballot. You can fix it right there. If you mail it,
you wouldn't know.
Do you know who the person is that fixes it?
No, of course not. And you're supposed to have a chain of custody. You're supposed to know basically the line of who touches your ballot. But as a voter, you never get to see that. You don't know who touched your ballot. You don't know who fixed it. And even if there was a chain of custody, who's to say that they're not lying about it? Who's to say that, oh, yeah, no, we fixed your ballot. No problem. We exactly bubbled in exactly what you put. You wouldn't know that.
Well, it's slightly worse than that. One person's reading it and the other one's filling it out. You're aware of that?
No,
so the person reading it might be honest, let's hope. The person filling it out might be honest. But at each end of that, without even human error, which happens, you've got a lot greater risk.
Well, of course. And then you're also playing like the game of fate, I guess, because like you're hoping that the people who are reading and filling out your ballot are honest people. But who's to say there's not shady characters involved with filling out adjudicated ballots? So
no, that is one of the places, though I think the main place where the cheating happens is the fact that a lot of people that have moved out of state or are deceased still find a way to vote.
Yes.
And unfortunately, it is very difficult for our county clerks to fix that. It's not that they can't fix it, it's that then they have to go to the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State could decide, say they got rid of 100 ballots. It's a bigger number than that, but let's just go with 100. Secretary of State could decide, Shirley Weber, I believe is her name, that no, we would like all those 100, and she could put them back in the system. That's the way it's designed. So we don't really have local control, though I don't think that happens very often. But ballots are not, or voter rolls are not cleaned the way they should be.
No. I mean, you hear stories all the time, especially now since the 2020 election, but I've heard more, especially recently, of deceased grandparents, deceased siblings receiving ballots. There's this one girl in particular that I go to school with, and her brother unfortunately passed away of an overdose, I think a couple of years ago, and her brother received a mail-in ballot with his name on it. Mind you, he didn't die yesterday. He died a couple of years ago and received a ballot, still no problem. And then they kept it basically as like proof of,
They needed to turn that into the register of voters, though they might have wanted to talk to the local news first.
Probably. Maybe.
But I mean, that's just one of many.
Oh, I mean, there's like so many, there's countless examples now. I mean, like even mainstream media, like news sources. Like I've seen articles in the New York Post now talking about, which is funny because of course 2 years ago you were an election denier who talked about this. But now you can see stories in mainstream media sources like the New York Post talking about old family members that have died, people moving out of state that are still receiving mail-in ballots in full with their name on it, and who knows who's voting for those because it's still going to their old address. So it could be the new people who own the house, it could be somebody who broke into the mailbox. You would never know. So, and especially those out-of-state people, you would never know if somebody voted for you or not because, of course, as a citizen of a new state, for example, if you're living in, I don't know, let's say Tennessee now, you moved from California to Tennessee, you wouldn't know at your old address if somebody was voting for you because, of course, you're a Tennessee resident now. You would just expect that you would only vote in a Tennessee election. You would have no idea that your old address is being used. So it's just a lot of shady business that needs to be cleaned up, obviously, because because in my opinion, until we get our election rolls cleaned up, until we get our elections straightened out, I think this is a perfect example of it when you're still counting votes almost a week and a half after the election. I believe you can no longer have safe elections. You cannot feel safe and secured in your vote, knowing that your vote counted, because you don't know if your vote counted. You would have no idea. You could say, you know how they have like the online tracking system that you can see your ballot? How do you know that's not lying?
All you know with that, it doesn't mean that it's counted. It means they're acknowledging that they've received it. Now, they tell you that it's been counted. That's not actually true.
No.
I know people that are very involved in every step of this, and no, all it means is they've acknowledged that they've received your ballot. Doesn't mean that it has now been counted. It means that hopefully it will be. But there's a leap of faith, and we should set up an election system where there's not much of a leap of faith.
Exactly. It needs to be day of, on time.
With ID.
With ID. Exactly.
But, you know, I've been told by quite a number of Democrats and heard national figures say that, you know, ID is, well, racist.
Of course it is.
I think it's racist that you would believe that somebody, because of the color of their skin, would have trouble getting an ID. That's ridiculous to me.
That's just, it speaks more to them. It shows more racism on their part, because it shows that they think people of color and minorities are stupid enough not to be able to go to the DMV and get themselves an ID, and to say that we're the racist ones at the end of the day for saying, no, everybody can go to the DMV. You can go get an ID. It doesn't even have to be a driver's license. It just has to be an ID card. I had an ID card before I got my driver's license. It's a super easy process. You get it in about like 2 weeks in the mail, 3 weeks sometimes, and boom, you're done. That's it.
What do you think of do you have any particular races that you were watching for November 8th?
I think probably the Blake Masters, Mark Kelly Senate race, and the Carrie Lake Katie Hobbs race. I think Arizona was a super important state. Also, I think the Doug Mastriano governor race. I think those three were the ones that I watched the most.
I was not surprised that Masters lost. I didn't think he was a very good candidate.
Really?
I thought he was just okay.
Oh, see, I disagree. I think he was a good candidate. I think he was.
But he was not supported, though, by Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell pulled funds.
And I think that goes to a bigger, I'm not trying to get myself in trouble here, but I think that goes to a bigger conversation about older establishment leaders in the party, that if you don't go their way, it's the highway, and you get your support pulled, but more importantly, you get your money pulled. I mean, Blake Masters was outspent, 8-1, I believe, in that race. And it wasn't because of the grassroots donors that didn't donate to Blake Masters. It was the money from big donors, aka leaders in the Republican Party, who decided, oh, he's saying rhetoric about the elections and election integrity, which now, of course, is okay to say, of course, after this election. So we won't support him anymore. He supports President Trump. We won't support him anymore. And I think that just goes to a bigger problem of the disconnect between the establishments in the Republican Party and what I like to call the new MAGA party, because I believe that's where the future of our party is going. It's going the party of America first, the party of
populist
Trump.
Party.
Exactly.
On the other hand, I thought Carrie Lake was absolutely amazing, and I am heartbroken over that. When I think of how Hobbs dealt with an interview that she had with a Hispanic station, and the interviewer asked her, name one thing that the Hispanic community has taught you. And she fumbled and bumbled, and it was truly embarrassing. I mean, she'd been better off to go with Jill Biden's.
The tacos.
Yes. She could have said breakfast tacos and it had been better than what she did. That's how bad and embarrassing it was.
And that was pretty bad, so.
A third of the people that vote in Arizona are Hispanic. How in the world did they vote for that woman?
Well, I think this goes to a larger conversation. I don't believe they did. I think that election, in my opinion, is far from over. There was a video that just came out either early this morning or late last night, saying how Carrie Lake would exercise every legal possible avenue to do a recount, to get all of the proper votes counted, because, in my opinion, it's a little shady that you have the person running for governor who's the Secretary of State, who's in charge of all these votes,
in the same county that had nothing but problems last time.
Exactly.
Had a huge number of problems.
Exactly. I mean, Maricopa County is like a huge birthplace for fraud, specifically in elections. I mean, in other things too, but specifically elections. And the fact that you have the person in charge of all of that in charge for running for governor and supposedly won, I think is incredibly shady. So,
Yep. We're going to go ahead and take a break. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. I want to say thank you to everybody that's watching on social media. This has become a calling. I love the fact I get to meet interesting people, have real conversations, learn about their perspective. Hopefully, I also bring some education, that I inform, and that I motivate people to action. If our country is going to change, we need action. We're going to go ahead and come back. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. In this last segment, I always like to focus on hope and solutions. Today I'm joined by Addison Werth. She is at Fresno State. She is the Vice President for Students Right to Life?
Students for Life.
Students for Life, sorry.
No, you're fine.
One of the things I think is hopeful is the fact that you have an event. Tell us about that event. And people, if you need it, is the general public invited?
Oh, absolutely. This is very much a general public event.
Okay.
So we are hosting the first ever Gala for Life for Students for Life. This is a black tie formal gala. We are honoring local heroes in the pro-life community. We're going to have some great speakers. We have yet to announce them. We have them already in our slate, but if you follow us on Instagram, we are Fresno State SFL on Instagram, and we are also the same handle on Facebook, Fresno State SFL, and you can follow us there. And we are also giving part of the proceeds to Pregnancy Care Center Fresno, which is a great job of helping women in crisis during the whole course of their pregnancy. They offer free medical services for women, even if you have like Medi-Cal or Medicare. They will still offer you services, which a lot of other OBGYNs and pregnancy resource centers will not do. So it's going to be a super fun event. There's going to be a silent auction. We're going to have a fully catered dinner. And this is the first event like this that a student organization has put on in Fresno. It's going to be at the Clovis Veterans Memorial District on December 10th from 7 to 10 p.m. And we hope that the whole community comes out.
So what day of the week is that?
It is a Saturday.
December 10th.
Yes.
6 p.m.
7 to 10.
7 to 10.
7 to 10.
Clovis Memorial Building. So that is just east of Old Town.
Correct. It's across the street from the Mercedes Edwards Theater, where the Clark Intermediate campus is.
Yes.
So it'll be a super fun event. We've been working for months on this. We have some amazing people on the slate, some elected officials that are going to speak as well. So like I said, please follow us on Instagram and Facebook. We also have a Twitter, but we don't really post on there. It's Fresno State SFL, and we post all of our information on there. And to purchase tickets, you can go to Eventbrite, and you can go search Gala for Life Clovis, and we will be the first one that pops up.
Okay, so we need to put that link in the Facebook notes because the majority of my viewers are on Facebook, though it's growing in other places.
Absolutely. Yes, I have the link ready and available. Student tickets start at $30, but if you're a student and would like to volunteer, we are currently looking for volunteers so you get into the event for free. You can go to our Instagram page and you can DM us. And we also have a promo code so you get $5 off if you do not want to volunteer. It's also Fresno State SFL. And adult tickets are $70. It's a free drink, free meals, or a free meal, a free dessert bar, and access to the silent auction and to hear some amazing speakers. And like I said, part of the proceeds are going to Pregnancy Care Center Fresno, so it's super important that we help them because they're a really important part of our community and preserving the sanctity of life.
Well, I hope I have not got my work schedule, but I think I will be able to make that.
Awesome.
I look forward to that.
It'll be a good evening.
I'm always energized when I go to events like that. The place that they're important, it's not that they necessarily, you learn a whole lot. Sometimes you do, depends on the speakers. It's that you go out with like-minded people and your values get reinforced. That whole idea of instead of standing alone, you realize there's all these people that you share things in common with. And I hope that will bring you strength. So I hope people make this event. What else are you doing or why would you be in this fight with You said 38% more vote for Democrats of your generation.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you be in this fight? Isn't it hopeless? Shouldn't we just give up and roll over?
I feel like that's what a lot of people believe, especially in this state where there's not a whole lot of hope. But at the end of the day, you have to focus on fighting for the future, which is us and potentially our children. And if you don't do it, then, I mean, it's really a lost cause, because as the generations go on, they're just becoming more liberal and more liberal and more indoctrinated from our school systems. And for families too, who also learn through the school systems all these ideologies and then teaching it on their children. But if we can have those small conversations on campus with the tabling, talking to people about how important life is, how you and me just started out as a small little itsy bitsy tiny little thing, and now look at us. That if we really just put it into perspective, then we can just give some hope to other people. I mean, we've affected, not me personally, but our club in particular has helped multiple pregnant students on campus, getting them the resource they need, throwing them baby showers, and now have happy and healthy children, and we're still able to get their education and have a career. Our former vice president a couple of years ago, she became pregnant while she was a student at Fresno State and is now going to get her master's degree from Stanislaus State University. So it is possible. We're here to give hope to students. And again, we're not a political organization, but we will support initiatives or speak out against initiatives that don't support life. And Prop 1 was a great example of that, and SB 24 as well.
What do you say when somebody comes up to your table and says, well, you guys, you're anti-freedom?
We're freedom for children.
Wait, as if no matter what, you have rights in this country?
Exactly. The rights start when you're in the womb. Rights, in our opinion, and many scientists' opinions start at conception. So
not just many scientists. Most of our states' laws say that if a woman is pregnant and a drunk driver takes her out,
double homicide.
It's a double homicide.
But when it's abortion, it's totally fine.
Sounds like squishy morality.
Just
morality of convenience.
Morality of convenience. That's an excellent way of putting it. Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's really just important to stand up for all women, the right to life, for sure. When you have the argument, my body, my choice, that might be your body that's harboring the baby, but that's a baby's body. That's a fully formed human with lungs, with a face, with eyes, with toes, and with fingers. And you taking away that life is, in my opinion, in my eyes, incomprehensible. But I think we need to start out baby steps by reaching people on a campus when it's easier now, starting January 1st with the new initiative that was passed, it's easier to get an abortion pill on campus, free of charge, no questions asked, than it is to keep your child. And I think by us being on campus, we're able to flip that narrative and really counteract and say, you know what, no, we will help you. We will get the resources for you. Your baby is important. Whether you want to keep it or put it up for adoption, that's completely up to you. But every baby's life is important. Your life is important. So we want your child's life to be too.
If life isn't important, then if it has no value, and that's what I believe a lot of the left is beginning to embrace, the culture of death. Where's the hope? There isn't. That's why I think this issue, it's not just the life of the child, it's hope of society. That we need to strive for the next generation, that we are better if we make ourselves in the image that we want to see in the future. And
absolutely,
those kids are the future. Final thoughts? We're down to about 30 seconds.
It's important to stand up on campus. All students need to stand up on campus for the right to life. Even in other political issues too, even if it gets you harassed, even if it gets you bullied, even if you get yelled at, that as long as we're standing up for the issues that matter, the lives that matter, that at the end of the day, you're doing the right thing. And it doesn't matter what other people say, that at the end of the day, you can be proud of yourself and know that you're doing the right thing.
Well, and if you see somebody being harassed, you should stand with them.
Absolutely.
Even if you don't agree with their position, it's not okay.
No.
The person having a fit, can just go have their safe space. And,
exactly. We should be teaching tolerance, not people yelling and bullying each other.
Yep. On that note, I thank you for sharing this time.
Thank you for having me. It was really fun.
This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. For our social media audience, one more chance. Not all the details, but the when and where of your event. We
are doing a black tie. It's called events called the Gala for Life. It will be at the Clovis Veterans Memorial District, which is across the street from Clark Intermediate School in Old Town Clovis, from 7 to 10 p.m. on Saturday, December 10th. And the ticket link will be in hopefully the Facebook down below. And I'll also be posting it on our social media, which is Fresno State SFL on Instagram and Facebook, and all of the information will be linked there as well. And we hope to see the whole community there supporting life and supporting local heroes for life. We'll be doing awards and giving back to the Pregnancy Care Center of Fresno, which does so much for mothers when they're pregnant. So.
Well, I am thrilled to hear that, and I hope to make your event. I thank you for coming in today, Addison.
Thank you for having me.
That's a wrap.